Okay, let's get started. I'd like to first introduce the people on the panel. On the far end is Jim Caruso from Media First. Next to him is Chris Cameron from Elemanica. And next to him is Cindy Hain from Elemanica as well. So we have people who are fairly experienced in this business of connectivity. And what I'm going to do is to go back through my slides very quickly, and I'm going to say to them, okay, you've seen the bottom of the barrel transportation implications. What does it mean to the kinds of things we've been talking about here? So let me change the first slide, and I'll ask a quick question to kick things off, and then we'll open it up for you. So rule number one was things always get better. I just have to wait and let them solve my problems for me. Nowadays, they ain't getting better. I have to solve my own problems, and here's proof of it with respect to capacity utilization. So my first question, this is rule number one, is used to be the supply chains would solve all the problems. Now, used to be the truckers would solve all the problems for you. What do you got to do now to solve problems for them, and is there a benefit? What do you think?
Well, one of the things I like to tell my customers is your supply chain exists outside of your firewall. So your ability to optimize your supply chain needs to also exist outside your firewall, so coming from a technology perspective. And so that's where I think the ability to collaborate with your carrier base is vastly improved if you use a business network like Elemaca's Supply Chain Operating Network. So that's one of the key things that I say is that it's about getting connected to your carriers in a way that you can collaborate effectively so that everybody can become more efficient. And we've got a couple of ways and case studies where we've done that.
Give us an example.
Well, one example, detention or wait times at your facility, right? That is a zero value added activity. Nobody wants it. They're going to charge you for it. The drivers hate it. This is not like fuel surcharges where they like to make money on detention costs. So your ability to get them and their assets moved through your operations and through your facilities quickly will have a direct and positive impact on becoming the shipper of choice with your carriers.
It used to be the carriers talked about detention, but they never charged it, and the driver who was paid by the mile was not compensated at all. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, most carriers are charging detention, and a minority, are actually providing detention relief to their drivers. But if you wonder why the drivers hate it, it's mainly because it's wasted time. Now, comments from the other two?
So what I've seen at Elemaca, we're usually engaged with our clients my team is on the process side. So how do you get your shipper or your supplier to help with the solution? It's a Pavlovian problem. For X number of years, we've been telling the shipper lower, lower, lower. So you scale your manpower. I'm a recovering freight forwarder. So during my freight forwarding days, it was all about, recovering truck driver as well. So it was all about getting the lowest cost to be able to deliver the service. That means the shipper asked, we responded. So in order to get the shipper or get the carrier to help with the solution of the problems, it's not an ask response anymore. And it's going to take a bit of time in working with that carrier to retrain some behaviors. Because I can't tell you how many times as a carrier, I would go to the shipper and I said, the reason why we're not doing this is because you call at Friday afternoon at 4:45 and you want this going this fast. Or our Wayback Machine is broken. We can't deliver this in London the day before you gave it to us. So it's going to take that kind of thing as you look upstream to the processes. As Cindy mentioned, the automation is what's necessary to make it happen, but the process underneath it, you end up with, as was said earlier today, you start automating bad data and watch it go bad faster. So that's, if you're going to engage your supplier to change your processes or provide solutions, they have to look in the Six Sigma way, to one step to the left, one step to the right. Then they can start to bring you solutions. If you don't give them that opportunity, nothing will happen.
flux capacity?
Well, from a macro level, companies have supply chain planning or supply chain design organizations, sometimes in-house, sometimes doing iterative work. And the more that companies can have that and iterate with the changes that they see, the better that they can come up with things like the carrier bid package that the carriers see, and those kinds of things. So the other thing the carriers see is like freight billing and payment. Are you paying on time? How are you getting to the point of being a preferred carrier? And Cindy mentioned the dock issue and accessorial charges, but do you have a way to do dock scheduling? Are you making it easier for carriers to arrive at the dock and on time and without conflict?
Comments or questions from the audience?
Sir, I just wanted to, your comment about trying to be a preferred carrier, I kind of put that around. Say, how can I be a preferred shipper?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question next.
Preferred shipper. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, because it used to be the other way
Exactly.
around. The carriers were trying to be the preferred carrier.
No, that's exactly right. Can we stop delaying or extending payment terms? Can we help them reduce the waste associated with their own operations? Can we pay them faster? Well, we can pay them faster not by let's implement self-billing. That's not going to necessarily pay them faster. That's just going to push the audit process to the carrier. Let's eliminate the audit process. Let's remove the waste from the entire supply chain. Everybody benefits.
It's interesting. Anne Marie made a comment about speeding up information transfer, but still having bad data. I used to work in the economics forecasting department, and one of the things we discovered is the more rapidly a system responds, the more it's disturbed by a random event. So speeding things up does not solve things if you're fundamentally providing bad data. Let's go to the next topic here, and we've already started on this one, profitability, and I have two questions, and I'm going to break it into. I'm going to go into a bit more detail of the preferred shipper argument, and that is, how do you find carriers who want to go where you want to go? What's the process? How do your tools help you find people that are fundamentally aligned with your requirements, not just somebody who's bidding for your business?
One of the things I think is interesting is we talked about in the bid process, making sure that you have a robust bidding process and the capability to evaluate the bids so that you're enabling your carrier to give you a response that's profitably allowing them to take your bad freight, right? So we talked about, it used to be that give me your good freight and I'll take your bad freight. And I think there is still an opportunity for that if, through some sophistication in the bid process and the sourcing process, that you're able to allow them to bid on things and evaluate their responses in a way that gives them that opportunity. So I think that's still one way to do it, is in the bid process, combine lanes in order to get the coverage that you need.
In the bid process, you get your 5 core carriers, and they all give you, they all cover 80% of the thousands of lanes that you give them. And so for the most part, you have 3 or 4 choices. How do you know which, and they're all roughly in the same price range. How do you know which choice is a serious bid and which choice is just, you'll get 60% load reliability rather than the 92 you need? How do you tell the difference using your tools between a bunch of people who just put a number out there and the people who really want your business?
To get to that level of detail, I'll take your question and break it up into 2 places, because you asked, how do you get your carriers to go where you want to go. One is location in our standard OD pair. If you do the standard OD pair, you're going to get that answer. There's no differentiation. But the question of how do you get your carriers to go where you want to go, do you want them to start doing cross-docks for you on the West Coast? Do you have something that you see in your data where they can start doing trailer pooling because you have 7 customers in the Chicago area, and your on-time delivery at that point goes up instead of getting stuck at the terminal because you can't do it, you can't deliver to your customer because your customer said, nope, not until my trap trailer's ready. So the question is not just geographic on where do you want to go. The question is from a service level, because now when you get that rate back, you can start to see the distinction that yes, they're X per mile, X per kilo, whatever per hundredweight, whatever that is, but not only that, they're positioned to do the type of service in a location that I want for my group of customers. Now you're aligned both geographically and from a customer satisfaction point of view.
And you're implying that you know more about their business than they do.
That you're implying at that point
Have
you know
you
about
met
your
them?
data. You're knowing more about your data. So what we see is when you start to deal with your carriers and it answers up through the procurement only, it's just going to come back in a rate per mile, rate per X. It's got to be matched with the users, because I worked in a chemical company before Lemica, so I'll leave that aside. Our carriers were all managed through the sourcing team. We had a lot of operational problems because every time here's your new carrier would come down, so I ran the logistics center of excellence. I already felt the pain each time. Here's your new carrier. How are we going to get ready to prove these wrong? So it's not just it's not just direct geographically, but also what kind of service you're trying to do and what are you trying to achieve?
Just one important point. If you have the benefit of big data at your hands, and the visibility to identify, to link it to a carrier's needs, you should never assume that they know what the hell's going on.
That's correct.
What I can tell you is the carriers are 99% focused on busting the nut for the next day.
Correct.
They simply don't step, they should, but they don't step back and say, wait a minute, I've got 6 loads going to LA, why don't I do a drop lot? So if you can provide that, you become a preferred carrier very quickly.
Right.
That's powerful.
And you see carriers who actually started to learn that grow into 4PLs. And they're not carriers anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Any comments, Jim?
These cross-docking opportunities that he was talking about, you can't really find those unless you're doing some kind of good supply chain plan.
Yeah.
And Anne-Marie really didn't talk about supply chain planning or design in her presentation, but she knew what the issues were. She knew what the problems were and how to solve those and how to present those. And so the opportunities like that to save money or to get capacity are improved by knowing what risks you have and what risks your carriers have and helping them manage, what's not profitable.
Comments or questions about this topic?
Do you see that people will start to bring business back in-house? So rather than going out to a logistics service provider, they say, well, I'll run my own shipping department again. I'll have my own trucks, my own assets.
Are you asking me that or are you asking them that? Okay. I'll answer it. The overwhelming trend is the other way around.
All right.
And these kinds of tools provide the shipper with a kind of visibility of service and cost that allows them to be confident they'll get the service levels they need for a private operation. The other thing is that with these regulations and taxes and government issues and risk, by the way, as well, trucking has become increasingly complex. It's harder to manage unless you're a specialist.
And you see the difference between outsourcing and dumb sourcing.
Outsourcing and what?
Dumb sourcing.
Dumb sourcing?
Dumb sourcing.
What does that mean?
Exactly. So dumb sourcing is the idea when your carrier becomes a verb for shipping inside your company, you've now dumb sourced. When your carrier,
what are those words
when
again?
your carrier becomes a verb
A verb. Oh.
Let's
inside,
FedEx
so we have it. Let's FedEx it,
Shire
right?
Yeah.
When that carrier is now a verb, you've dumb sourced because you no longer have the ability to manage and look at it. And when you get the reports from your carrier of 97% on-time availability, you have to believe that. And from Alemica, since we go into our shippers, how many times do we go in and when we say, okay, Cindy and I will go in separately together and try and get the data. Well, let me call ABC shipper and get the data on my shipments. That's a sure sign that you've dumb sourced it, and the carrier is now doing the work for you, and you don't really have an idea of the mechanics. True outsourcing means you gave the work out, but you kept the ability to manage and the ownership of the data you still have to be able to evaluate it.
I actually have a question to our customers, because we were talking about how do you get carriers to go on lanes that are not attractive for them? How do you get them to take your bad freight? And given the process industry focus of Alemica and the folks in the room, I'm just wondering if that is more prevalent or less prevalent, because there's less variability in the network itself, because these assets are difficult to replicate, and so I'm just kind of curious about if that is a problem that my customers experience.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about meeting up with the carriers. We don't. Our philosophy is more of contract with the carrier and freight with the carriers, relationship with the carriers.
We actually have, one of our plants they don't want to go to pick up. It's not in a good location. So it's all about the contract, and it's about the relationship with the carrier.
So even within the infrastructure of the chemical industry, there are attractive and unattractive locations. So
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's truckload. It's not around any major hub. It's not around a lot of volume. You're not going to get a lot of trucks going through that area that are empty. It's just not a great location. The other thing that I think we've noticed too is LTL carriers. LTL carriers at one point were expand. We are going to have 100% direct coverage. Now it's get out of those small terminals that are not profitable, close them all, interline everything. Now you have a situation where you have freight going out your door and you can't even understand, is it really delivered or not? So you really have to be careful when you talk about the bidding tools. Can you identify interline points? Can you exclude the interline points? And are you going to have to take on more carriers just to manage all of that, I think?
Yeah, kind of going on the point about the ugly places. I know from Air Products, we had some products which blew up very easily. So you built your plant in the middle of nowhere, so if it did blow up, it would take out a load of wheat fields, but not much else. And so there isn't the movement of trucks through it, and you are the major employer in the area, and you're the major money for moving product in and out. So you end up moving towards more local people because they know you and things like that, rather than the big companies. You end up with this dichotomy of, well, I want to use Menlo for everything, but actually I know I need to use John Smith trucking because they happen to be in that location.
That's a great point.
As you were referencing on capacity and the complexity of the regulation, how is the private carriers coping with that? Because they can't keep up with that digitization.
Well, there are three answers. First off, they get smarter. That's the easy answer, but that takes work. The second answer is there's a whole bunch of vendors that will help them manage through that process. The big answer is that they're outsourcing. And what's happened on the carrier side is that they've figured out that being a dedicated carrier is inherently attractive because you get preference, and the business is inherently more stable. And therefore, not only are these kind of tools making it easier, but the carriers like it more. Other comments? Back here.
Yeah, I guess my question is, and it's probably more in North America than any place else, because there's, and I think we're kind of underestimated the driver situation in the future. Where does rail come into play? in this? A lot of trucks on a lot of trains.
I'll answer that unless you people do. First off, remember there are two kinds of rail. There's the mixed carload kind that where the train's made up of cars of different types, or else the train is made up of cars of all the same commodity, but it's not intermodal. That business is largely 99.999% unrelated to the trucking business. And I can prove it in two statistics. Let's take a load of chemicals moving from Houston to North Jersey. The truck price per carload equivalent is around $12,000. The rail price is $4,000. And the rails make a lot of money at $4,000. So the costs are quite different. But the service by truck, it's third morning probably, or second afternoon by truck from Houston to New York, and it's ninth morning by rail. So the service and cost characteristics of rail carload are fundamentally different than truck, and there's almost no interaction. I've made a lot of money over the years studying this interaction and pretending there was a lot more, and there's plenty of people who claim there is. It just isn't true. Intermodal, however, is much more directly competitive with truck. The problem with intermodal is it requires high density. And so where you have that high density, which is principally between ports and inland places like LA and Chicago, intermodal dominates. I estimate the market share of drive-in intermodal between California and Chicago is over 80%. The problem with intermodal now is that it has largely penetrated those markets. And domestic intermodal over the past 6 months hasn't grown at all. It was growing quite rapidly. Now it's not, because the truck market is now back from short capacity. The issue with intermodal is they have to find a way to become more profitable at less than 1,000 miles, and they haven't yet. And the technology is inherently difficult to do so. And so the long-term issue is it's not clear that it's going to do much more than it does now. It does a lot now, but not a lot more. Any rebuttal to that?
Where do you see this going? I mean, you've got your 500 mile, your 1,000 mile, and over 1,000.
Well, over 1,000, it's all intermodal, and it'll stay there until we automate the highways.
Between, I guess, the 500 and 1,000, is that 2
Well, yeah, and well, here are the facts. Only Norfolk Southern is investing in that distance, and they're investing in only one corridor between New Orleans and New York. And it's inherently difficult. The shorter the haul, the harder it is for intermodal. So the answer is there's a little bit of movement. No, there's a modest experiment by NS that's attempting to break into that market more. The jury's out. But nobody else is trying to do anything. So in the short term, it's highly unlikely between now and 2020 we're going to see anything. Automation has the potential to revolutionize intermodal, because now you automate the yards and you can run short trains and get high frequency, which is required for the short term. And furthermore, it dramatically reduces the loading expense, which is a big deal right now. And so you could triple the number of yards and double the number of trains. The problem is that from a cost standpoint, automation helps truckload more than it helps intermodal. And so they would have to outperform truckload trucking in that transition with one hand tied behind their back. It's conceivable, but unlikely. So I think we have seen a very impressive improvement in profitability in railroads, which guarantees that they'll be with us. We weren't there 30 years ago. Their mainline infrastructure is now in good shape. The branch line's terrible, and it will die unless we subsidize it when the bridges break. They're 100 years old now. I, for one, would not do that, because you can transload much cheaper and use a truck to deliver it. But the railroads are profitable and stable. Intermodal has proven that it can do truck-like work at over 1,000 miles. I don't see a big change.
I'll just add a point about the data associated with these moves, these intermodal moves, and just specifically about the latency of the data. So for a longer, lead time shipment, perhaps you can accept the data latency between when the event happened and when you hear about the event happening. But as the intermodal, as those lead times shrink for shorter lead time shipments, it's going to be less and less acceptable. So just adding the point that, as we implement these different transportation methods, the ability to get data in real time is going to become more and more important. And I'm hearing that very much a lot from my customers now, is wanting to know what's happening with their shipment in real time, and the ability to take some of the automation capabilities that are in the market and pull in the data associated with those shipments and provide that back to my shippers is one of the core product strategies that I have.
Questions, comments? Let me check my thing here. There was one more question that I had, excuse me.
I think it was about regulations.
Oops, sorry.
I think one of the things, Noel, you were talking earlier about the regulations and the unintended advantage to the shipper of the regulations is going to be perhaps the ability to have this information associated with their shipments, have that more automated. So that's another point I was going to bring up and see if I can get some more comments about as well.
Anybody want to comment on that?
Panel, colleagues?
So I have one more question and then we'll quit. My question is this. So far we've talked about a two-party exchange. There's me and I'm talking about one carrier at a time.
That's a great point.
What is is anybody doing work that combines the loads of or combines the tractors of more than one carrier in an attempt to get efficiencies looking at more than one entity? So if I'm Walmart, for instance, and I have visibility to 30 large carriers, can I get an information system that'll help me optimize with those guys?
So we're starting to see this with a couple of clients who have really begun to move in that direction with ocean freight, using the ocean freight mode, right? Because if you can crack the ocean freight problem and handle that mode, then you can expand it to 30 different carriers of the same mode. So we're seeing a lot of them saying, look, I use a drayage company to do my own drays. I'm using X number of carriers plus my forwarder to be able to move it, organize it, and then I've got my procurement department who has my own carriers. So we're starting to see uber data visibility layers over the top of it that start to bring in multiple modes around the same reference number. And we're in implementations right now with clients doing that. With the strategy is once that problem is solved and you fix the ocean freight problem, then you move to getting multiple truckers and staying within the same mode that still are all able to be reported on within the same data platform. So that one seems to be to improve the end customer experience, and it seems to be gaining traction among our client base.
We talk about the supply chain is not a chain, it's a network. And we've basically extended that even further to say it's not your supply network or your value network, but it's down to each transaction itself is a network of partners. It's not just, don't look at it just holistically. Each transaction in and of itself includes a network of partners. And so pulling all of those partners together into one ecosystem is important to get you the visibility that you need.
I think there's technology coming along, like, I don't know if you all know about the tile that's sitting in front of you, but just tracking devices that can track loads at a much lower level and maybe provide visibility of free truck capacity so that when that truck pulls up to the dock, your transportation management system can tell you what, can I put something extra there? Will it help me? Will it help me fill my capacity? Will it lower my cost? It would even be a big benefit to the carrier.
We're seeing something which is a first order expression of that on the spot market side. Well, on the contract side, people keep their contract information secret, right? And so it's very difficult for a transportation economist like me to get visibility except through the ATA and some other people. On the spot market side, there's now 2 load boards that are collecting millions and millions of data points about either the availability of loads or the availability of trucks. I have a slide that I didn't bring with me that's based on 45 million data points. Now, this stuff is not real time in the sense that it's hourly. Well, actually, they do track it by minute at truckstop.com, but it's the I think one of you mentioned, or maybe Anne Marie mentioned, the business of big data, and I think the visibility of all of this stuff is exploding, and I would suspect that somebody is going to provide a tool that manages it for us. Maybe it's you guys first, I hope. Any final questions or final statements before we quit? Yes, sir. Here, let me...
Thanks. You were talking about driver shortage in your presentation, and obviously I'm from the European market, and we're seeing a move of drivers from east to west. So you'll go to plants and they'll now have translations in Polish of how to deliver into a German or a French plant. And so we're dealing with some of that driver shortage just because we've got a very low wage border in Poland, Romania, things like that. Is the driver shortage you're going to have in the US, is that going to decrease your productivity? Are you going to see growth issues against some of the other markets that you're competing with across the world? Is Europe going to be shinier than the US because we've got more drivers to move product around?
If it weren't for automation, that'd be true, but automation will solve the driver shortage. The tension here is that we have 5 years of crap and life-threatening shortages before we get nirvana. Now, I would argue, by the way, that solving the nirvana will be more difficult than the survival, because when we're in the survival mode, we'll do stuff. When we get to the 20s and we start automating, we'll just, the average shipper will declare victory, and the people that I hope are your customers will be secretly running off ahead of them. But I don't... automation is radical. I mean, otherwise, by the way, we'd be in big trouble because we are, the workforce is growing very slowly for all issues, not just trucking. And ironically, immigration is the solution, but that's not what we want.